Now that we understand how tests fit into the development cycle, let's look at how to determine exactly what to test and which kinds of tests are appropriate in different scenarios. We're going to look at two kinds for now: unit and integration tests. Unit tests are the simplest and lowest level tests, meant to check a single unit or component of an application. A unit test might, for example, check that a single method handles certain inputs correctly, or it might test that the state of an object was updated correctly after an update method was called on it. Unit tests usually don't test an entire user story at once. Instead, they test individual steps. In our shopping cart example, one unit test might check that adding an invalid inventory item to the user's cart results in an error. Another might check that removing an item from the user's cart actually results in the cart not having that item anymore. And yet another might check adding an item to the cart. As you can see, these are all small components of the logic of the application. Independently, they test simple conditions of our app's execution, but together, they can verify large chunks of functionality. The next layer of tests are called integration tests, and they are what they sound like: tests of groups of components interacting with each other. This could be as simple as testing the app's access to the database, or how it responds to an HTTP request, and as complicated as simulating a typical user session in detail, checking that every system works as planned. As with many things in software development, there's a gray area between unit tests and integration tests. Sometimes you need to test a small, interconnected group of components or method calls at once, and even though more than one unit is under test, it really acts like a single unit test. The rule of thumb is that unit tests should be used to test invariants, conditions that do not change, and integration tests should be used to test user actions and process flows. Use unit tests to check that your methods behave correctly for valid sample inputs and that they handle edge case inputs correctly, nulls, for example. Use integration tests to simulate user actions and trigger complex processes within the app, checking that the app state is updated correctly throughout execution. There are other layers and styles of testing, but these two are the fundamentals. They verify an application's correctness during the development process, which is invaluable to the application's developers. One final thing to consider when writing tests is the scope or environment the test requires. Unit tests often only require access to the platform runtime, like the JDK and project files, since they usually just test an app's code. Integration tests might need access to other environments though, like the database or a browser in the case of automated user testing. In those cases, it's often important to consider the state of the external environment before and after a test. If you're testing that data is correctly added to the database during some user action, you'll need to be sure of the state of the database before and after the action. And if you're testing that a link on your web app sends the user to the correct location, you'll need to know the Windows location before and after that click. We'll discuss some concrete strategies for this type of state management when we look at JUnit and Selenium later in this lesson.